It's the end of the workshop. It's not quite yet the end because we want to discuss among all our presenters here who come from very different perspectives, very different disciplinary approaches, and then also engage you in a discussion about the inventory, the methods, and how to move forward. And to start off with, I actually want to hand over to Anne, because she's the inspiration why we're all here with her inventory and the methods that they have been developing. And maybe you can take the opportunity to reflect a little bit on the last 3 days and also your vision for the future.
Okay, thank you, Ron. So Ron told me that he wanted me to do this, in the middle of the break. So basically, he's given me a memory exercise. And I have him sitting here in case I forget somebody up here. So I'm going to start with Alexander. Oh, no, I'm not there. Sorry, I'm not starting with any people. I'm starting with, first of all, that it's really amazing to even have a conference on the inventory. And I am incredibly grateful, A, for Ron thinking that you ought to bring that inventory to Brazil, and second, being kind of behind facilitating all this, of course, with the rest of the team. So I want to kind of hit two things. I want to talk about the presentations here, pointing toward what you all are developing here in Brazil and some of the big questions that I think come out of what we've heard from the presentations. And then a little bit on the end, in a second bit, I really want to say something about the evolution of the inventory from our development of it, from our development of it to your expansion and further development of it, and how do you guys send it off to its next level of development. Okay, so Brazil and the presentations. Now, where's Alexander? Alexander. So he started off with some of the big picture issues around studying non-ordinary experiences, which was great. One of the highlights of that is the mandate or whatever, not to exclude any theory from consideration, that we got to be open to the wide range of theories and test everything. Okay. After that was our presentation, and I'm going to come back to Elliot with Ron. So I'm skipping us. Everton, right? Everton came next. Okay. The mediumship topic was awesome. You had the opportunity here in Brazil to work on something that we couldn't dive into in the same depth as you could do it here. Yes, we have some spiritualists in the US, but they're a tiny minority, they're hard to find, et cetera, et cetera. So you had a huge opportunity here to expand on what we did. I think one of the huge takeaways from Everton's talk is what he said about mediumship being an umbrella category. That's huge. And so by that, remember what he meant is that the phenomenology that mediums are experiencing when they say they're in contact or incorporating some other entity varies dramatically, okay? I think that's a huge principle we got to keep in mind, and it's going to come back when I talk about some of the other people. After Everton, it'll come back when I talk about Octavio. So, first part of Octavio's topic, mind-body stuff, mind-blowing, God. We got to keep this in mind about how the body's affecting the mind and being able to ultimately connect that up to, he said he's working from the bottom up, from the molecules up. And when we're designing the inventory, we're working from what people say about the experiences that they might have had 20 years ago very much from the top down. So there's all kinds of possibilities for that, that we're seeing for how the two can meet in this whole kind of stack. Okay, second part of his talk, near-death experiences. I think near-death experiences, as they're culturally understood, and I don't mean our item that says, have you had an experience in which you almost died? I mean the big near-death experiences that are so popular and supposedly everywhere. I suspect they're another umbrella category. I think we need to be very careful to see what different phenomenologies may be involved and potentially treat them separately. In other words, out-of-body experiences, I think this is what we're getting into, what Eliot calls the jingle-jangle territory, okay? So we can have out-of-body experiences that may be part of near-death experiences in the cultural sense, but then we could have out-of-body experiences that have nothing to do with dying. Okay. Now I'm up to you, right? Yes. Okay. So now I'm going to do Ron and Eliot. Okay. So both of them are deep into aspects of methodology for validating surveys, but they come at it pretty differently. My sense would be Eliot is deep into the nitty-gritty of how do you use the RPE method to validate survey items and the importance of, as you've heard over and over from us, do they understand the questions in the way that we intend? And so he's emphasizing the importance of theory in that, but I think that's a little different from the way that Ron has been coming at sort of the same, they have similar training and backgrounds. So the way that Ron's coming at it is more meta. And he may have to help me because these words, we heard a lot about variance and invariance. And then he just told me a bit ago something about, well, what Eliot's talking about is functional something or other. You can see this is an area of my deep expertise. Anyway, but just in that comment, you hear the difference between them. Eliot's talking about how do you do it. Ron's putting it in the context of a bigger literature and arguments about what these different things are. That's as best I can do with those. I'm sorry. I think you're all I have left. Yeah. Okay. So.
Except for that presence.
Yeah. Okay. So, at first when I thought about George, I was like, oh my God, how did, AI, the nature of consciousness, all the hard problems of the world, or the problems of non-ordinary experiences going to get solved or not solved, like all these other questions. But I guess the thing that kind of sticks in my mind, and actually it's the connection between the first part of Ron's talk and George's, has to do with the qualia thing. And the extent to which, in my talk, I talked about experience in the abstract is the flow of experience of which we're aware. And he sounded like he disagreed with me, but he doesn't really. Because what he was saying is that the flow of information is much bigger than the amount of which we're aware. Okay? So when we're asking people about their experiences, they're only going to tell us about the stuff that they were aware of. But then there's all this other stuff that was happening at the same time. It seems to me that goes right back to this, is the qualia aspect, is the subjective awareness aspect of our experience essential? Is it playing a role, or is it really just, would we be fine without it? You know, would AI capture, you know, is the AI quote experience, which is just the flow of information with potentially no qualia, is that enough? Okay? Did I do it? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I forgot the big picture part. Okay, so the big picture part, this is really probably less for the general audience of you than for the team, the Brazilian team that's been working on the inventory. I just think it's really important, having made this huge step of bringing the inventory here to Brazil, doing all these new kinds of analysis, developing new items, validating new items, etc. For the team to keep thinking about kind of how do we package what we've learned to make the inventory as easy to use in new places and to keep a comparative dimension alive. I mean, why I wanted to present our data on India and the US, even though after all that validation in the Hindi, we got such a limited number of respondents, is because I wanted to stress to everybody that part of the intent of the inventory was to be able to compare between cultures. So I'd really want the Brazil team to keep thinking forward to how do we keep that possibility alive. Because obviously you'll find a lot of things within Brazil, but how do we compare here to other places?
Well, actually, you know, like, I want to take the opportunity to actually invite all our speakers here, and also all of you in the audience, also our amazing, give them a big hand of applause for running the workshop yesterday. Invite also our, you know, like, workshop presenters to basically engage in a discussion here, engage in a discussion with you. So feel free. I mean, who wants to fight over the microphone here first? And
I would like to get the opportunity to, that we have to make a big thank you very much for this woman there in the end. Yeah. So. I personally saw so many efforts she made to give us these great days here. So thank you, Rosiane. You are amazing with all your efforts. And also I'd like to thank, I use my speak now to thank Holly.
So nice from you. Thank you. Thank you for all that you did also. I know there was a lot of effort from all you. And especially Otávio was, you know, my partner on this journey here. He bring like 10 students from his lab. So I think it was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aidor, Rony, George, sorry, George, for bringing science here to bring spirituality to the stage of Idor. This is really a great opportunity, because I remember when I was 19 years old, I entered a spirit center with a group of young students, and then I said, from the first moment I said, oh my God, I would like to study this as a science. I saw that I was not in a religion place, but I felt from the beginning on that I was entering a scientific field with psychological and spiritual point. And now, after more than 20 years, I'm here, so happy, feeling that this is part of my dream, and I'm really happy to be here. And to you also, that participated here, who are very interested to this field, the people from the reports, the journalists who help the eyes also. I was feeling important because they are making interviews. Oh, very nice. We have some people here also. I would like to thank Professor Romero Balada. He's there. He's a professor at the University of São Paulo in the Institute of Psychiatry, right? So, and Fabio also, several people here I got to know and who inspired me to do science. And you all who are interested, we have even a singer there, a very good singer. So this was so amazing. I thank you all for being here, and Tiago and the people here from the organizers, and especially also now for Everton, Ronald, who gave, and the
Forever and Everton.
You gave me the opportunity. You believe that when I saw the meeting, I said, "Oh, guys, was always my dream to be in such a kind of research." And then you believed that I could contribute. And also, I was with the expectation to give back you also a good contribution to this meeting, and I highly thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, for you all, I would like to say thank you very much.
Maybe like somebody from up here, or maybe from your perspective, how would you like to move forward? Like, what are like steps that you might be taking or thinking about moving this research forward? Thinking about the inventory, the methods, applications, implications.
Yeah, I think one of the main contributions of this workshop, in my view, is that it highlights the truly interdisciplinary nature of the research field and the impact, the importance of these topics for the study of consciousness, the study of a series of other relevant topics in neuroscience and different fields in psychology, psychiatry, medicine, social sciences. So it would be amazing if we had the opportunity to organize, in the perhaps, a similar event like this one, but with many more speakers, to dialogue with people from other fields, etc., because it's very important. What we are able to do here is very important to So I think that many more people needs to know about that kind of studies and research. We are doing this in a more restricted context, which is very nice. It's very important to help develop the field in Brazil, but maybe an international event in the future to really highlight the importance of all these important studies and investigations. Yeah.
Quick one, following Everton's remarks. I think it's crucial that we look for rigor in research. Like, it's so easy to do bad science. So starting as we started here, being together, and earlier this with the Templeton Grant, that's like a, kind of allowed this to happen in a way, because there's a common goal to do something. It is a very good starting point for Brazil in this field, and it tells us like to build a solid field, transdisciplinary field, as you touched, that there's many. So there's the neuroscience aspect, physiology. There are so many aspects like applications, mental health, for example, and starting in solid grounds is fundamental, and methodology is at the core of everything. Methods actually safeguards all of us so we don't miss this from our horizon. So just take that.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you all for being here, for the initiative, and following Everton's proposition and George's. From my perspective, as I'm working with children and it's a methodological aspect to integrate and to value children's voices and the qualitative aspect of the experience. So it's not just a suggestion for the future to try to integrate the qualitative point of view in the methodologies, maybe discussing mixed methods or qualitative methods, because I think this is also important to balance the quantitative aspect, which is more integrated and mainstream nowadays.
Yeah, I also would like first to thank all the organizers for this amazing meeting. I think it's very important this opportunity that we had to have people who are doing research in the field to be together, to have a close connection. I think one of the major fruits of this meeting is exactly the possibility of building partnerships, strengthen partnerships that already exist, but I think many new partnerships will be developed here, and there is a synergetic interaction that will multiply the power of the work that is done. And I think this is the most important stuff. And as Jorge said, I always emphasize the tricky stuff in the hard thing in our field is how can we, and we must join the extremely rigorous research at the same time, a non-dogmatic and open-minded approach. So to put together these two ways of dealing with things that quite often are in opposition, I think this is the real challenge to really make advances in our field. And I think this group here definitely works in this way. Thank you very much again.
I was thinking about Elliot's talk about we're walking on known waters. What do you think that are the unknown waters? Like the... Yes, I don't think it was clear.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the unknown?
You said that we're walking on known waters doing this research. I would like to ask, what is the unknown? What do you think that is still a dogma that we can't, that would be like hard to get accepted, you know?
The non-ordinary experiences in general getting accepted. That's a good, well, don't know how to boil it. I mean, it's part of the trouble, and I think this comes back to a point that I wanted to make. I can't remember if I made about Alexander's point, but early in the very first talk, he's listing all these different terms for these types of experiences, and you know, part of the reason is, you know, people disagree about what they want to call it, but another part is that people have, you know, there's a lot of very different subsets of experiences, a lot of umbrella terms, and so I think that's part of the challenge. Is there's you know, especially when it comes to mainstream science, there's so much sort of stuff in the popular media, stuff that's not really careful science, and that distorts people's idea of what these experiences are and what we can come to know about them. And because they're rare and we don't know how to understand them, you know, people, well, one of the things Anne has brought up, at least with us, I don't know how much it came up here, but just the kinds of people love to go and, you know, turn these studies into a way to sneak in some ontological claims about, oh, mystical experience means this or that about the nature of reality, and I think all that's fair game in its appropriate context, but a lot of it gets muddled up in with the scientific discussion, and so when you have something that's so mysterious, it's hard to find your footing and figure out, you know, what you want to make your object of inquiry. It can be easy to slip into, you know, well, the concepts are very slippery. So, yeah, as far as what's, and I think it's so mysterious. It's another sort of frontier of science, and there's a lot to learn about it. And I guess that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I would like to expand briefly on what Elliot's comments, because we know that there are these two different perspectives, ontological and phenomenological, in the investigation of non-ordinary experiences, but in a certain way, what the workshop, what all the presentations show, highlight, is that there's still much to be done in terms of the phenomenological research, phenomenological, psychological aspects. And these two perspectives are not antagonistic. They can, in a certain way, researchers from both perspectives can collaborate. And it's important to make sure that we have inventories, questionnaires that are well developed, that people are able to understand the questions, that is more semantic, language issues are taken into consideration. This will be important for better ontological research. So these two aspects are not antagonistic in my view. So what we are doing here, what we saw in the presentations, both in terms of phenomenological and ontological aspects, are of fundamental importance and shows the relevance of non-ordinary experiences for science. So, for example, George's presentation shows clearly how all this stuff has important connections with discussions about the nature of consciousness, artificial intelligence. So it brings the discussion about this experience into the mainstream. So this is of fundamental importance.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on what Elliot said too, and picking a little different tension than the one Everton just said. But so looking the tension between the phenomenological and what we were sometimes following Everton, we were calling umbrella concepts. Other contexts, I've called them complex cultural concepts. But this gap or tension between the cultural level, the ideas that are circulating in a culture, the meanings of concepts like mystical experience or near-death experience or mediumship, and the phenomenological level that we have to get really precise about if we're going to do the research. But there can also be interaction between those levels in practice. So do you have more, quote, mystical experiences in the context of psilocybin research if you're living in a culture that's already telling you that you're going to have a mystical experience if you take psilocybin, than if you take psilocybin in a context where nobody's talking about psilocybin in relation to mystical experience. So we get really interesting feedback loops between our cultural concepts and the phenomenological experience. And that level can also be super tricky to tease apart.
Just to make a comment, I think we are trying to scientifically explain a phenomenon that it's part of our nature. No? So when we go back to prehistory, we see that men, they were biting on the walls. No? When you go to all kinds of societies and cultures, we see that non-ordinary experiences, they were present everywhere, from Egyptians to Indians to US, everywhere. But from the 17th century, when we have the scientific revolution, which was essential for us to structure in a methodological way to understand life, the science said, okay, now we don't want these things because witches were burned at the stakes. And if they were burned, because they were seeing, they were having mediumship experiences. So, for instance, reincarnation is a history fact. Until 553 was believed as a normal law of the nature. And the Roman Empire, he abolished this because the woman said, his wife said, okay, we have to take out reincarnation from the law here, as it would be possible to exclude now gravidity and say, okay, let's have no gravidity anymore, and we all will go up flying as it was possible. So I think now we are having, again, a friendship between two sides of our nature. That's science. We all, since when we are a child, we have, in the first years of our life, the teleological stage where we ask our parents, why, Father, why, everything we ask why. And then sometimes the parents are unable to understand this natural scientific profile we have. We say, stop to ask everything, kids. Okay. So the same with the spirituality. How many children they see spirits? They have colleagues, spiritual colleagues, play with them. So and nowadays this meeting is amazing because this represents giving hints from two important and ever-existing parts of our human nature. So and this also a proof that not denying facts will be able to kill some things. Spirituality was always there, and it's coming back for science. I think this is amazing. So, and I'm really happy for this.
Yeah, on that, so I think I share your feelings and considerations. But just want to, for the younger, because it took me many years to kind of have a hint on that. Like, science is a way to look at reality. It's a set of methodologies, concepts, theories, and so on. It is not reality, science, right? It's a way for us to, what do we call science? Something we can validate with scientific method. There are other ways to apprehend reality. So art, for example, observation or meditation or contemplation. There are several ways for us to apprehend what do we call reality. And just by saying that within is not proved by science doesn't mean that things don't exist. But on the other way too, just because we feel experience things doesn't mean they are scientifically real, right? And that's very important to have this distinction because it's not neglecting what is outside science, but at the same time, it's not bringing into science something because we have different beliefs, right? We have different experiences. Some of you are in spiritism, some are agnostics, and we can live together and we can talk about science. We can respect individual differences. But when we talk about science, we really have to, we can have different cosmologies or cosmovisions. And I think that's, and you have been working for your whole life on this, like how do you accommodate different individual cosmologies or cosmovisions? We don't have actually, but to understand and having a way to measure them is very important if we want to bring this to the realms of science. And we have a couple of physicists here. I'm like an amateur conceptual physicist. I love physics too, but we don't have to go very far. If you go to core of it, perhaps the most successful theory ever in science is quantum mechanics, right? It makes precise predictions, and you control. It's hard, but it's very precise. Even within, the greatest minds, right? Einstein and Bohr and many others worked hard to make this happen, right? And even within quantum mechanics, quantum mechanics, you have the measurement problem. The same. It's a different measurement problem here as we have, but it's a measurement problem. It hasn't been solved. People divide. Some people say, no, the quantum realm is, the possibilities are out there. There's no reality there until you measure it, only probabilities. Others would say, no, there are hidden variables, and etc. I think, this is a long story, but people are still divided, and there are things that we cannot address. For example, and We might create tools, and we do have to create tools to address that. Until we create them, you can be able to measure. You can only imagine and debate. So, for example, the existence of disincarnate entities. So it's a great way to earlier talking about the presence and etc. It's beautiful. There's a methodology actually to measure what we're talking about, how we define it, etc. It doesn't mean that it has ontological validity, that the entities, but we must be open. Okay, until we have a method, a way to measure if these entities, if they can be measured in a way, beautiful, we can test that. And that becomes science. It's not science until real, but it's part of our worldviews, it's part of belief systems, and that is fine. A final example, is there something outside our universe, our known universe? There's no way to test this. But some cosmologists would say, oh, this question doesn't make sense because we cannot test. This is wrong, right? Just because we don't know how to test, maybe it's impossible to test. And now, in the last 10 years, it became more and more acceptable by theory alone that our universe is one of zillions of universes, right? They're popping up everywhere. But we are self-contained because space-time curves around itself, so we cannot cross that barrier. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. But it's not a scientific question because until we have a methodology and etc., we cannot validate that. Anyway, sorry for babbling.
And I think Gito did a better job answering your question than I'll just emphasize that the science is just a tool. Science isn't the ultimate reality. It's a tool we can use and inform our greater worldviews, but it's important to remember kind of where it is in the hierarchy of being. And it's a very useful tool, but there's a lot of stuff beyond it, and how much that tool can, grab onto the rest of the stuff is that big open question.
Since we're getting into the what is like science, what is science? I mean, it's a very complex discussion, and a couple of learned academies around the world right now have very heated discussions about what is science, what is knowledge, how does science relate to knowledge, what can we, these are often very critical policy questions as well, because what do you teach to your children, right? If we think about it, but also I think reflecting on what we are trying to do. When I started out as a psychologist, studying psychology, we had systems level theory like Bertalanffy and so on and so on. And like Gito was just talking about like how the difficulties that the physicists have measuring something that is static. Right? And now, like in Bertalanffy's hierarchy, like the physical system is the easiest to study. As we're moving on or higher up in the levels of complexity, we get to biological systems, to chemical systems, biological systems, and then at some stage we get to humans who have this really annoying habit of just changing. Whenever you try and look at them, they change whatever they're doing, right? So like actually the issue that we're confronting is that the phenomenon that we're studying is constantly changing. So there in psychology there are a couple of approaches already that if you open a textbook today about classical studies in psychology, they don't work anymore because they have entered through social media and so on, have entered like popular knowledge. And by entering the popular, way of thinking, the zeitgeist in some way, it has changed the phenomenon, right? So they're all we're right now.
That's what I was trying to talk about.
Yeah,
exactly.
So whatever we're studying is interactive and is changing as we start querying it. So for example, for me, as we had this discussion this morning about spirituality. For me, spirituality is trying to understand, are there regularities?
For me, that's spiritual, which is also in Indian philosophy. You know, like you don't need to have a god. Just assuming that there are some regularities that are susceptible for study through, for example, scientific methods, is already a form of spirituality. Well, I'm very happy with that. But we also have to accept that these regularities can change through the process of how we interact with it. How, for example, you were talking about, if I remember correctly, the guidelines about differentiating spirit mediums or, you know, spiritual experience from mental disorders, right? So, for example, paranoid, you know, like thoughts, you know, like apparently they are declining, right? So basically, the way things manifest are changing with everything that we see on TV, that we talk about, and so on and so on. So, you know, like, the exciting stuff is that we will never get finished with our work. Because, you know, like, as soon as we think we have some understanding of some regularity, that is my view of it, some kind of regularity, things probably will start changing, shifting, and so on and so on. So it's a never-ending process. But I think this is the kind of big picture, you know, like question of. On the other hand, we have to live our day-to-day activities. We have to live and function in a way that is healthy for us, beneficial for everyone around us. And I think that's also the other point of, you know, like, at least my motivation with this inventory, that there's a lot of stigma around these things. And, you know, like, we've been living through a major crisis recently with COVID, right, which really turned things upside down. For me, the experience was very positive, actually. You know, like, it's not very positive to say this, but, you know, like, for me, the experience was like, maybe we can create something better in our world, right? I think it was a missed opportunity, you know, if you think about it, right? So we had a moment that was very traumatic for a lot of people, which, on the other hand, opened up a lot of space for discussions, for rethinking. You know, like, we started with that mental health platform, right? How can we actually, like, offer, you know, like, practices, opportunities for people to, you know, maybe get better in their lives, you know, in a mental health context, but also in a spiritual, you know, like, the way, however way you want to think about it. So we talked about mindfulness, we talked about altruism, we talked about, you know, like, being kind to each other. How can we actually foster that? Because these are aspects of spirituality as well, right? And, you know, like, so also one invitation for all of us is, like, how can we use this research, right? So we have these meta questions about what is science, what is nature, how can we study this? But then also, with whatever we know right now, what can we do with it? How can we actually make our personal life better? How can we make the lives of others that we care about better, and society? Because I think that is, you know, like, one of the ultimate questions, you know. We want to live in a better world, we want to make it better. So how can we do it with the tools? You know, this very abstract stuff, RPE, oh my goodness. Statistics, you know, like, what do we make, how can we use this? And I think that's also an opportunity for reflection for all of us. How can we use these methods, these insights in the here, the right now, going forward? I think that's also an invitation for all of us here. If you want to reflect on that, think about how you can use it, abuse it for the good, and move forward.
I want to just add one anecdote to what Ron was just saying when he talked about the stigma surrounding some of these experiences. When we were pilot testing the inventory with undergraduates at UC Santa Barbara, you know, there were some students who came in and they just whip right through it and leave. And then there were other students who took a really long time with it because they were answering yes to a whole lot of questions. And I remember really vividly a couple of those students who took a really long time thanking us for creating the inventory, precisely because the experience of taking the inventory seemed to reduce the stigma for them of having had those experiences. I did not I mean, I was hoping that this research would reduce stigma by, you know, demonstrating these things were more common. But there was something in the experience of just taking it for some of these people that did that. So I just think we ought to watch for that. That I thought was very cool.
Yeah, when you compare it to you know, visual neuroscience studies where you're going for 6 sessions of 3 hours each of looking at gratings, you know, people hate that, but we always people love participating in the research, which is fun. So we can start there.
I think in terms of the practical implications for life, as you said about the missed opportunity, I think that our society in the last centuries developed in such a way that kind of blocks the possibility of spiritual development of people. Because it's usually considered that spiritual anomalous, non-ordinary experiences, I said in my talk, are considered not rational or superstition for silly people. You are a big guy, you should not have or talk about such stuff. This kind of mindset has a very deleterious impact on people's life because people have this experience and they think, but I should not. I'm not supposed to have this experience. What can I? So sometimes they suppress it or they start to be stressed by the experience because they think they are necessarily pathological. So I think one point more general in the population is exactly that, to just unlock this, to say, okay, it's fine to have this experience. They are common, and most people have this in a positive way. Okay, go ahead. So the idea is just to unlock this possibility for the general population. I think this is one very important aspect. But I'm a clinician, I'm a psychiatrist, and many of here are clinicians. This is also this other very important aspect in taking in consideration, for example, Thais' work with dying patients. She's investigating dozens of dying patients and the relatives and the clinicians when they have the opportunity to talk about this. Not only the patients, but also the clinicians. They have these experiences, the spiritual experience with their patients, but they cannot talk to the other. What my colleague will think about that, about me, if I talk about. So all this, finally, for example, when I gave my talk about my book, in The Science of Life After Death, when I talk about this experience, it's very often people come to me in the end to share for the first time. People who are scientists, who are, for the first time, they were able and feel comforted, because they thought, oh, I'm not the only crazy and weird person that has this. So this is very, very important. In addition to all the ontological discussions, but this more practical stuff. This is, I think, basically, I think human beings, usually we have kind of spiritual nature. We are naturally prone to this stuff and these experiences, but unfortunately our society, our current society, has blocked this aspect of human flourishing. Okay.
Based on what Alexander is talking about, there is something I've been discussing with colleagues in the field for some years now. I have the impression that we tend to give much focus to the mental health implications of these experiences, and this is undoubtedly it's very important. But on the other hand, we tend to look at these experiences through this psychopathological lens, through this perspective from the mental health field. And something that Ron and other colleagues are doing in the context of IDOR, which is very interesting, is to start looking at personality characteristics, cognitive correlates, to understand the implications of these experiences, not only to well-being or mental health, which is undoubtedly very, very important. I think this work on the clinical aspects, on how to deal with these experiences in the clinical practice must continue. But on the other hand, maybe start looking at these experiences from other perspectives, the potential of these experiences to understand other aspects of human life, creativity, imagination, and many other aspects of people's lives. So this is actually an uncharted field. We have much to develop in this sense. And we will only be able to do this when we start using a different lens, different perspective. And part of this is influenced by the terms we use. So when we call these experiences schizotypy, psychotic-like, dissociative-like, etc., you tend to emphasize the psychopathological perspective. We don't have better terms. Nonordinary experience is also a problematic term. We have had the discussion during the presentations, etc., during the whole workshop. But on the other hand, it's a more neutral term from this mental health or psychopathological perspective.
So I have a comment and a question for Alexander. So great comment. I congratulate you for your amazing worldwide contribution for spirituality. And for instance, analogously, we are like plants. Like the plants, they have heliotropismos, right? They move direct to the light, the sunlight, wherever they are, they try to get light. So my point is, who here believes in love? Raise your hand, please. Everyone. So, who ever saw love? You saw love walking somewhere? No. But not with the eyes. Directly, not directly. But we all feel love everywhere. Who has kids know what love. Who has parents, brothers, friends. We know everyone that love exists. So the same is the spirituality from my point of view. We all have spirituality surrounding us. Who lose a relative once in their life knows the power of spirituality to believe on this. And we have now several wars popping up in different places of the world. And I believe that love and spirituality synergize for us to have a better world. And this is associated a network of other feelings and attitudes as well. And so, Alexander, how you, with your great example of a scientist who had the courage to bring us a scientific way to study spirituality, how do you think spirituality also can help us to build a better world?
My friend's question. Very easy. Very easy. I think that there are different layers in this discussion. First, I think we as scientists, we cannot prescribe spirituality or faith or whatever. And as a clinician also, I cannot do that. But I think we can help people to understand this experience and even to allow them having these experiences. What we have learned from history, that spirituality, like all major and great ideas or feelings, can be misused, like the search for freedom, for liberty, for equality, killed millions of people also. So spirituality also can be a source of suffering, of problems. But I think in most, not only according to most studies and also throughout history, we know that spirituality usually is related to a better, a deep sense of meaning in life, because exactly usually the spirituality is the idea there is something larger, there is something more to life than what meets the eye. So there is something more important, there is some ultimate meaning in everything in our lives, and this shapes our worldviews. Most of our ethical system raised from these spiritual concepts, even concepts that we take for granted as secular concepts nowadays, like, for example, every human being should be treated fairly and equally. This raised through spiritual traditions. So the idea that I should not kill children. As soon as I have a children, I can dispose the children and let him die in the forest. So this idea, so a lot of advancements in our moral knowledge, in our ethical behavior also developed from this. So I think that's the point. I think we could help people to allow themselves to have this experience, and at the same time to know about the dark side, the possibilities of misuse, to learn from this. I don't think it's exactly a precise answer, but some thoughts on this. Thank you.
I just want to build on what Everton said, but it also picks up on issues that Alexander's alluding to, that he was talking about how we need to not just look at the mental health issues and think about, well, and we have terminology for, you know, in the medical area, we'd be talking about diagnosis and differential diagnosis and things like that. And Alexander's alluded to this, but I just want to highlight it, that if we're looking outside of that medical interface, religious traditions typically have criteria of discernment, and they use that language of discernment. And that's, in effect, a, quote, diagnostic language. But they're going to have different ideas. I'm doing a little translation exercise here. They're going to have different ideas, these traditions, about what constitutes health or flourishing, so that their discernment criteria are going to be oriented, you know, if you're looking at Buddhist traditions of various sorts, discernment criteria, they're going to be different from Christian discernment criteria because they're going to have different goals. But I think on a comparative perspective, like in expanding the purview, we ought to be looking at those criteria, and it gets to issues that Alexander was talking about, you know, that within a religious tradition, people can be having experiences that they do, a psychiatrist would legitimately want to diagnose as a mental disorder, and at the same time, people within the tradition might agree. And so how are they distinguishing all these things? So just to realize that there's systems of, quote, diagnosis over on the spiritual tradition side, and I think we need to be looking at them as we work through all these questions about the implications of these experiences.
Okay. I was thinking about the frontiers of the science that you told about, and when we discussed today about the consciousness and the AE, I think that yesterday we were talking about conscience, and I remember that the animals also have some level of conscience, and yeah, we can't define the concept of conscience and rightly nowadays, but we can talk about the human conscience, and we can say that in the human conscience, one thing that separate us from the machines and the artificial intelligence is definitely what we are researching here. Cause and many things about intelligence, many things that are rational or about the facts, we can create algorithms to the machine, identify it and reproduce it, and yes, and operate a new answer, and that we could and say that it's conscience. But things like intuition or other non-ordinary experiences, it's impossible to put in an algorithm. Also cause we don't know more about it. So it's impossible. We don't know how it works. And so it's impossible to put in an algorithm. And what separates us from the machines today? One of the things that perhaps we are sure is that one thing that separates us from the machines are the non-ordinary experiences. The machines cannot have non-ordinary experiences. And so it's not a little thing, it's important, because as Chaplin said 100 years ago, you are not machines. And nowadays, we have one kind of instrumentalization of life that sometimes the people forget that they are not machines. And also, I think it's very close by what we have to look for in the human health, in the mental health. Because here are the things that sure make us different of machines, and so the people have to consider it and approximate to it to have what makes us really human.
Yeah, taking on what you just said, I really agree with this point of view, which also dialogues with what Alexander was saying about morals and moral understanding being built on ancient spiritual understandings. And I really think non-ordinary experiences of consciousness and altered states or anomalous states or whatever you may call it really is something that constitutes us as humans. It's a very big part of being human. So I think, and not only being human in an abstract sense, but creating meaning and creating moral values and building societies, I think non-ordinary experiences are a prerequisite of this being possible to develop. And I think science, in a general sense, has the power of, in a very methodological and systematic way, understanding things. And by understanding things, it can naturalize things. And I think one of our jobs, maybe, as researchers in this field, is to move forward in a naturalizing sense of the non-ordinary, like create a social environment that is accepting and that naturalizes this kinds of weird stuff that consciousness produces as something natural and human, and that's very, very, very powerful and essential for human nature, basically. So I think when science takes upon an object and dissects it, even on a molecular level and a blood level, it makes it easier for us to naturalize it and create a social environment for people to be able to live these experiences without stigma and feel happy about them and create meaning around them, even the bad ones, even the bad non-ordinary experiences, which are very real as well. When you create the environment in which those are natural and natural to talk about, I think people will be more healthy in a general sense. You know, when you think about the clinical aspect of it, how can we work this in the clinic as well? But thinking in a broader social sense, I think it works. And there was a colleague earlier that was asking, like, how can we create protocols to work around non-ordinary experiences that are bad in a phenomenological way, that are hurtful and suffered. How can we work on them in the clinic setting. You know, how can we help people build sense around them and build purpose and make it go from a pathological and very suffered outcome to a healthy outcome and a positive one, a constructive one. You know, so just my contribution around this.
Right. Folks, thank you, first of all, so much.
Whoa.
Sorry, didn't want to do that. As a master of, like timekeeping and ceremonies, unfortunately, I have to cut at this moment. But I think there were two contributions right at the end from our students, actually, which I think sum up a lot of the stuff that we've been struggling with. In some cases, Alexander here in Brazil for like 20, 30 years, and for a short time. And all of us. And so basically, like, I hope this is really the first of many events. But, these events depend, first of all, on all of you. It was a bit of a gamble to put this together. So, that's why thank you so much for accepting our invitation to come, to talk, to inspire us. Thank you so much for actually coming and indulging and going on that journey with us. And I hope you actually will stay in touch with us, help grow the community, help us to make the work and the theories and everything better. So basically, you're the essential part of this whole enterprise. Right? We're just here features that hopefully will, like little seeds, will grow a much richer park, much richer, Amazon forest that will nurture the whole planet, right? And so, there are opportunities to stay in touch with us. So, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn. Right now it's like Instagram and there's LinkedIn. There's the initiative Ciência Pioneira, the Pioneer Science Initiative, which I think is absolutely amazing in offering opportunities for researchers, Brazilian researchers, to come back to Brazil. Because Brazil, like we all know, as an outsider, I'm not allowed to speak bad about Brazil, but we all know there are certain struggles, right? And how can we actually make it happen so that researchers can come back and thrive in an environment which sometimes creates obstacles, right? How can we provide opportunities for young researchers to actually develop their own research programs? So please get in touch with Ciência Pioneira. There are lots of opportunities to get involved, to get inspired, and to drive science forward. We also really would love to hear from you about what you thought about the event, right? So please, tell us what worked, what didn't work. Feel free to, help us to make this better in the future. What can we actually learn from this event to make it better and create a better opportunity for creating community, for creating safe spaces to share ideas, share thoughts, to build research, make research better. Right? But now I also, I already thanked you guys, but this whole event wouldn't have been happening. So first of all, a big hand to our, amazing workshop facilitators. We basically just threw it at them, right? So, because it's a scary experience. Like, we have Giovanna. Larissa is like an old, experienced person. Or Maria Clara. So, they are really at the stage of doing their master's thesis, and throwing them at you, was a gamble on everyone. So, thank you so much, first of all, for accepting it, for, doing an absolutely fabulous job. Thank you for also being such an amazing audience during the workshop from what I've heard. So, but also, again, give us feedback. How can we make this better? Then Luisa, for all the social media stuff, for, putting all the stuff together for us to, capture the moments, capture the ideas, get something that stays and is not just an ephemeral moment here for 3 days, but actually we can use that in the future and inspire other people who have not had the opportunity to come here. Thiago, for being over there in Italy and just a mastermind puppet, directing everyone here. But first, most of all, Rosiani, come here, Senza Pionera, who basically pulled all the strings to make all of this happen. Agora você tem que sentar ali.
Olha o fotógrafo que eu arrumei, gente.
Agora você tem que sentar ali. Você quer falar mais uma coisa?
Well, seeing, have seen all you're here, I would say this is our goal, right? That's what I dreamed about it. To see this face, to see the people. I get in touch with some people before, but when we are here and we see the faces, right? We exchanged a lot. Alexander was a big partner as well. So when we see the faces, that makes everything different. So I'm happy with this. Thank you for being here and really seeing you discussing, you exchanging, and why not? You having fun as well, right? It's the best feeling of work done, So I'm really happy for being here and being part of this beautiful initiative. And please follow us on the social media because there are a lot of things to come. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Chito, agora você tem que fechar.
What can I say beyond that, Ron? You're really a master of I just have to thank you all, especially our international guests too. They came all this way to here, and I would really like that we can make this happen again in an improved way, in a better way, always, right? And expand. I think the most important thing is do you keep going, keep walking, and that we expand. That you all actually spread the word because we have to make this community interest. The community interest in increase in this arena, and I think and I'm sure it is going to happen. And in Brazil, we have to put Brazil also on the map of that kind of research initiative. So thank you all, and
Vamos tirar uma foto todo mundo junto? Tá. Ó, essa aqui pode ser essa aqui. Agora, vocês têm que ir lá,